Charleston, South Carolina. Around here, evening is when folks come home, streets come alive, and people turn to America's most watched, most trusted news. Fair, accurate, objective. That's the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. We keep America on top of the world. Monterey, California. Around here, evening is when the work's all done. The fleet comes home, and people turn to America's most watched, most trusted news. Fair, accurate, objective. That's the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. We keep America on top of the world. Baltimore, Maryland. Around here, evening is when the boats head in. The kids come home, and people turn to America's most watched, most trusted news. Fair, accurate, objective. That's the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. We keep America on top of the world. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Around here, evening is when the whistle blows. Friends get together, and people turn to America's most watched, most trusted news. Fair, accurate, objective. That's the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. We keep America on top of the world.
To us, New York is a city without city limits. It's Central Park in Manhattan and Asbury Park, New Jersey. It's country lanes in a Long Island village and country music in Greenwich Village. New York is big business and show business, and over 14 million people smart enough to want to know more. So it's not surprising that more people are turning to Channel 2 to get their information. Channel 2 News, it's everything you need to know because anything can happen in New York. When it comes to making news, there's no place quite like it. New York is walkouts, blackouts, garbage strikes, and bus fare hikes. And some of its most interesting theater is on the streets. So it's not surprising that people who follow the news know there are only two things for sure: that anything can happen in New York, and Jim Jensen will tell you when it does. Channel 2 News. It's everything you need to know because anything can happen in New York.
New York City. Around here, evening is when the night shift goes to work. The crowd stands to cheer. The sidewalk comes to life. And because anything can happen in New York, people turn to Channel 2. Fair, accurate, objective. That's the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. Weeknights following Channel 2 News at 6 with Jim Jensen and Rollin Smith. Together, we keep New York on top of the world.
I think Don has always wanted to go after the bad guys, and I've always wanted to go find the good guys. If he were doing a story about the man who robbed the bank, I'd want to do a story about the victim of the robbery. So maybe in some way we complement each other. Our approach may be different, but I think we feel the same way about our job.
And when she came back from the Sudan, she made a statement not only about the tragedy of the starvation, the tragedy of the civil war, and the state of siege that the Sudan and Ethiopia is in. She came back and had the courage to make a statement different than anyone else who covered that story. She came back with a story of dignity.
The best news of all.
The Twin Cities. Around here, when the day is done and frosty afternoons turn to dusk, the kids come home. It's time to settle in, and people turn to the best news of all. Fair, accurate, objective. That's the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather and Channel 4's Don Shelby, Pat Miles, and Dave Moore. Together, we keep the Twin Cities on top of the world. Enlightening.
Dedicated.
Entertaining.
Enterprising. We give you the complete picture on Channel 2.
Chicago, growing, thriving. Around here, evening is when the workday's done. The rush home begins, and new sounds fill the air. That's when people turn to Chicago's most trusted news, Channel 2. Weeknights, get the complete picture from the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather and the Channel 2 news team, Bill Curtis, Walter Jacobson, and Don Craig. Together, we keep Chicago on top of the world.
Tonight at 6, a real life and death drama in Midtown as a woman is pinned for 6 hours under a crane. We'll report the amazing rescue that saved her life. Then at 7, the Superpowers Summit in Geneva ends, and President Reagan is homeward bound to report the results to Congress. These stories and more tonight on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather, following Channel 2 News at 6 with Jim Jensen and Rollin Smith. Together, we keep New York on top of the world. Monday at 5:30, teenage murder. On our city's streets, sudden violent death is becoming a tragic fact of life.
Everybody's armed. It's no problem to come up with a gun.
Then, job discrimination against cancer patients. Illegal in Illinois, but a dehumanizing reality.
He compared me to a used car.
These stories and more Monday on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather, followed by Channel 2 News at 6. Together, we keep Chicago on top of the world. Tonight at 5, the Twin Cities dig out. Minneapolis police crack down on parking violators, while medics give warm relief to chilled frostbite victims. Then he's a national advertising smash.
Do I look like I have stupid written all over my face?
The importance of being earnest. Tonight on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather, following the 5 p.m. report. Together, we keep the Twin Cities on top of the world.